Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 75th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, it's going to be short and sweet as opposed to my hourly long rants, just on touching a bit and exploring a bit the concept of harmony and dissonance. And I wanted to revisit a metaphor that is often used, that I also used at some times to sort of give or exemplify 5D and this transition to 5D. It is this idea that there's a frequency band and of vibrations, and you have lower and higher vibrations, and that basically humanity operates within a certain frequency band at the present, and then you just expand that frequency band. Like a piano, where you would have, you know, some octaves, and you just add an octave on top of the one that you're already playing. And I don't really like that metaphor anymore because I believe there is a something amiss here because ultimately I believe that with you look at if you look at the whole on philosophy and the way that reality structures itself in these holons or parts, then it's not a scale that is gradual that goes from lower to higher. It is scales within scales. So what do I mean by that? I mean by that for instance, and if you look at what Eckhart Tolle says sometimes, is that if you have two people fighting, for instance, at the level of the human, it's a very dissonant kind of relationship if they're fighting and they're upset and they're hurting each other. At the level of their atoms or their molecules, it's fully harmonious, as harmonious as the sea beating up on the beach, as harmonious as anything really. And sometimes he uses this expression of it's just a dance of molecules. And that is not to just say that it's okay to fight with people. That's not the point. The point is what is disharmonious at one level may be harmonious in another. So, for our atoms, for instance, especially for our atoms, the atoms contained within our bodies, what happens to our bodies is irrelevant from their perspective. They don't see it as, when we die, they don't see it as a death, they don't see it as suffering, they don't see it as pain. They have a continuous experience where they are part of a rock. Then they get assimilated by a plant. Now they are a plant. Then they get eaten by an animal. Now they're an animal. Then they get eaten by a human. Now they're a human. Then the human dies and they become the grass again. And it's just a series of adventures um, that they experience, which is really interesting to them. And by the way, where they can store a lot of the information that we call the Akash or Akashic records. It is you can actually go and read the experience that is stored within a single atom, because that atom has lived through billions and billions of lives, billions and billions of adventures. It is very likely that it's linked to, in one way or another, to the birth of our star, the birth of our solar system. You can consult just about anything and everything by going into an atom and asking it, questions about the universe, memories. And of course, the Akashic records need to be read by someone, by something. Um, Information, for instance, for the atom, its entire lifespan has no meaning or sense to itself. And only when a higher human decides to read it, then it can make sense of it. It can give it some kind of meaning. It can say, I want to know about this. Otherwise, it's just one continuous experience and existence. It's like, for instance, separating the fact, like if you kick a ball, for instance, and it rolls, um, from the perspective of an atom of that ball, there is no concept of a beginning of an activity like the ball sitting there and you kicking it, and an end of an activity or an action where it stops moving. From the perspective of an atom, since it doesn't know about the concept of ball or any of that, for all it knows, it's actually just a tiny little electromagnetic self-conscious unit of information that is tied to the entire universe and just floats along in the universe, in the galaxy, in its solar system, through space and time, taking on different information, like, for instance, move from here to here, with no particular meaning as to when that action started or stopped. And so it has to take, someone has to actually observe it to segment activities and information and read certain information. So this idea of harmony, I want just going back to that, harmonious and dissonance. To ourselves, of course, when we're fighting, it's still a bit dissonant. And so the way that I prefer to see it now is that you have like one scale, for instance, that you master. And then once you master that scale, you have a scale within the scale. And so you have like a mini piano inside each of these, where you can have dissonance inside harmony. And then in that piano, there's another scale here, there's yet another set of vibrations. And so it's, again, a sort of a nested system instead of a linear expanding system where you just add another kind of octave to your keyboard. It's more keyboards within keyboards, because at the level of atoms, here you'd say this is atoms, their scale, their interactions with each other, for instance, the periodic table, how they interact with each other, what has to happen when this atom meets that atom, how they interact with each other, all that is fine and harmonious. But then if you delve into the second layer of molecules, that's fine as well. It's also harmonious. But then if you delve deeper, then the ones with the cells, where it's somewhat harmonious, and it can be actually disharmonious because of humans, because we don't treat our bodies with the respect that they require, giving them enough physical activity, don't paying attention to them. And then within that scale, still, if you look at human relations between themselves, then that's still quite disharmonious. And so in this vision, we are harmony. That is, if you consult your atoms, if you consult your molecules, you can really get a sense of that harmony within you. And so that's why also I like really Holon philosophy, because it pushes you to look within and to seek the inspiration for the harmony that you have within, to project it on the outside and try to replicate it at your level of reality with what is surrounding you. And the last thing I wanted to mention, which is really funny, is that if you read some of the comments that higher civilizations have about us, they are quite astonished that we have reached such a level in music theory and the complexity in music and harmonies, like jazz, like contemporary classical music, the exploration of sound and marrying various sounds so that they sound pleasing to the ear. Even all of those meditation musics that you find online with this number of hertz that heal and this and that. And yet, the absolute dissonance that we create in our relationships with each other, with the world. And so it's it's quite interesting and funny that for the hearing part, for the ear, we have created a very consonant or harmonious environment, and everything that falls outside the scope of hearing, we sort of ignore it as if it doesn't exist and it doesn't need any kind of harmony applied to it. And so, if you actually applied the teachings of music theory to 5G bands or radio waves or Wi-Fi, no, there wouldn't be as many problems. There wouldn't be as many controversies because if like listening to a guitar which is out of tune or a violin that is out of tune is so displeasing to the ear, it's so strange that humans sort of say, well, um, if I can hear it, then it matters that it's in tune and in harmony. If I can't hear it, then it can be chaotic and I don't care. As if, this 5G, Wi Fi, and all of the other waves that we're exposed to constantly is pleasant to the quote unquote ears of ourselves, which are bathing in this, irradiated by these frequency bands all the time. And the same for our interactions with each other, basically, the information we exchange. And so it's funny that we've gone so deep in mastering harmony in classical music and all kinds of other music and sound, and yet we haven't managed to sort of extrapolate that to outside of music. And even though we know that everything is a vibration, everything is energy, even the people that are not spiritual, because that's basically what Einstein already discovered, that all matter is just energy in motion that takes on a particular form. So again, I hope you found this interesting, and talk to you in the next video.